Sorry about that, babe.
After a long break between scenarios, I finally got around to Shining Force 3 Scenario 2. If you want to check out my first ever playthrough, I have a let's play of it on my channel, which I'll link in the pinned comment, description, and end screen. So this review is going to be a little different than my usual ones of the last few years. It's going to be a little bit more free-flowing. The reason? Well, I already reviewed Shining Force 3 Scenario 1, and for the most part, the games at their core are very similar, as they are a continuation of the epic story. Things such as the Thief Ruins, the secrets, friendship building, special attacks, and so forth are still very much present in Scenario 2, for example, so I don't want to rehash everything. Sadly, I was not able to conduct this playthrough on real hardware as I ran into numerous issues with my Sega Saturn. As such, I played on the Ymir emulator and was not able to transfer over my Scenario 1 save data, which is a bummer because I did a pretty good job in that one on my last go through, and because of that it prevented me from seeing some cool stuff that could be transferred over, such as getting specific force members, NPCs surviving, enemies that you encounter, and so forth. Briefly, Shining Force 3 Scenario 2 delivers more of the same, but more refined. In terms of the soundtrack, there were some standout tracks from Scenario 1 that made its way over into Scenario 2, but there's also some new bangers to be heard along the way. Motoi Sakuraba is a goat. What can you say? Graphically, you could see a step up in Scenario 2. Some things that stood out to me were areas like Stump Village, where it just oozed with atmosphere and liveliness. The battle scenes, general scenery, and spells seem to pack more of a punch this time around. Everything on the whole just seems more slick and refined. The development team definitely hit their stride with the 3D animation/engine, and I can't wait to see how Scenario 3 looks and feels. The controls were more of the same for me. I guess having a bit more experience with them now, it's a bit smoother than it was initially, but I do still have issues sometimes searching in tight areas and finagling the camera properly on the battlefield, though, in my defense and in the controls defense, some of the battles have awful vantage points in Scenario 2. Story-wise, this is where things really gripped me. I want to say this now. I do think that Scenario 2 is better than Scenario 1. But it definitely has its flaws, and most importantly, if you don't play Scenario 1, Scenario 2 will not hit nearly as hard. In Scenario 2, the story follows the adventure of Prince Median, the youngest son of Emperor Domeric, a character that you are more than familiar with if you played through Scenario 1. Scenario 2 is basically a one-to-one timeline alongside the happenings in Scenario 1, but now you see the other side of the story. You actually get to see Symbios speak. Prince Median is loyal to his father Emperor Domeric and his country, but he struggles throughout as clearly there are other forces at hand creating turmoil between the nations of Dystonia and Espenia. There will be more battles with the Bolzum sect, twists and turns, tug on the heartstring moments, and Median working in parallel with the Symbios army, helping them deal with some issues so they don't have to. The story was just as intriguing, or perhaps even more so than Scenario 1, and I absolutely loved seeing the other side of things. I was marking out about this a lot early on especially. A very good angle for the game. Difficulty could be a point of contention. On the whole, Scenario 1 was more difficult, in my opinion of course, with regulated or minimal grinding taken into consideration. In fact, through most of Scenario 2, I found that it was insanely easy to the point where I was a little confused. Now there are some tough spots. I remember Chapter 4 the difficulty turned a little bit. In the end was very challenging for someone that didn't want to take a lot of the time, quote, building up the secondary force, I'll leave it at that, but the majority of the game was a cakewalk. An enjoyable one, but a cakewalk nonetheless. Scenario 1 had its fair share of cool characters. Donteris aka Big D, Mascarin the Flame Bay, Grace, Hayward, and who could forget old Nooner's Arctic Blast. But to me, Scenario 2's characters are better on the whole. Median is now one of my favorite protagonists in gaming. I love the relationship between Synthesis and Yaruto, and just them on the whole, especially Yaruto. Azuki's the GOAT. David is a very interesting character. Hedva's summoning was great. I thought Robbie was going to be lame, and I ended up loving him. Pappets was also super interesting. It was just a shame you weren't able to get Pappets earlier, but I understand with the whole beast taming ability that might have been a bit awkward. So yeah, you could tame beasts to use in battles, kind of like the mercenaries you could hire in Scenario 1, but admittedly, I wasn't able to get it done and I didn't go out of my way to do so, so my bad. Anyways, to each their own, but overall I prefer the cast of characters from Scenario 2. Battle-wise, there were many memorable skirmishes along the way. Admittedly, the gimmick battles, at first I thought Scenario 2 was handling them better, but I actually have to give the edge to Scenario 1. For example, there's a battle in each scenario where you have to save villagers. Scenario 1's take on it was much more interesting and less baked in. And this is a perfect segue into some of my gripes with Scenario 2. I mentioned it already, but the difficulty of the first half of the game leaves a bit to be desired. It's almost Shining Force CD levels of easy. I don't want to be punished too much on a first playthrough, but the difficulty could have been ramped up a little bit more consistently throughout the game. And onto my biggest gripe or gripes with the game, towards the tail end of Chapter 5 and the beginning of Chapter 6, you are forced to do escort quest style battles with Emperor Domeric. I could see sprinkling 1, maybe 2 battles in like this, but it really overstays its welcome, regardless of the logical tie-in to the story. And my goodness, the pacing comes to a screeching halt at the beginning of Chapter 6. Battle 25 and 26 are some of the worst back-to-back battles that I've played in Shining Force. Escort-related, slow-moving, awful terrain, awful gimmicks, and rehashes a battle from Scenario 1 but made much worse. Not even a potential save data carryover change in regards to Battle 26 would have made it feel any better to me. Anyways, enough rambling. As I said, I wanted to get a quicker review out of the way here for Scenario 2. If you want to hear more thoughts on certain things, I recommend checking out my older Scenario 1 review, and yeah, this isn't my typical review style anymore, so this felt a bit, I don't know, kind of odd but also refreshing at the same time. Anyways, Shining Force 3 Scenario 2 was a great time. A logical and welcome step up from Scenario 1 for me. I give it an 8.75 out of 10. I highly recommend that you play it if you haven't, but don't forget, start with Scenario 1 first. If you've enjoyed this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. Check out my channel for much more Shining Force content. I have a bunch of playlists and videos, just give it a search, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.